And a very good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101. We're making uh, an early start this evening. Mr. Norton, who is going to be our guest, had some uh, stuff that came up today, and we had to juggle to find a time to fit him in. Hence the early start and the late notice. We didn't want to advertise the show and not being sure that Mr. Norton would have made it. But he's here and he's going to be here up until 7 o'clock. So please spread the word, share the link, let everyone know that Aubrey Norton, the leader of the PNC and the APNU, is here this afternoon, this evening, and we're going to be talking to him about a range of issues. And as I said, he will go up to 7 o'clock, and as promised, I am going to open the phones at 7 so that you can get to weigh in on the Norton interview and that other issue that has to do with the young police woman who it was alleged that Nirvan Singh spat upon. And we are going to be talking about what does that say and mean for race relations in Guyana. And we're going to be asking the question, whether African Guyanese are being taken for granted as we try to navigate this very delicate moment in our history. I say delicate because this moment is a convergence of our new oil, petroleum status, in the wake of a controversial, what the Americans have called a disputed election, and in the context of what I see as a power shift, how do we deal with the question of race and ethnicity, which is always there, and we have tried over time to wish it away. It never goes away, and perhaps it is time that we face it head on, or it will consume us. That's my own view. Anyhow, we'll talk about that later on during the calling period. But we'll start with the interview with Mr. Aubrey Norton and try to get in as much as we can. Aubrey Norton, leader of the People's National Congress and the Partnership for National Unity. Welcome again to Politics 101. Is Mr. Norton there? Apparently, Mr. Norton is not hooked up, or when he is ready. In the meantime, please share the link. Share the link as far and wide as you can. As I said, we'll spend the first part of the show talking to Aubrey Norton. Already I see some of the questions coming in, and we'll try to get in a lot of those questions tonight. As I said, we had scheduled Mr. Norton but some things came up today that he had to attend to, and so we had to make an early start. And as I said, we didn't get to advertise as widely as we should have because we were not sure of the time. I'm seeing here Marvin Williams is saying, we seem to have forgotten that a young indigenous Guyanese man was brutally assaulted by presidential security personnel. The assault followed a sit-in president saying that the former president, were he there, would slap the young man. Remember John Adams of Ishalton Village, Rupununi. And I remember that incident. And Marvin, you're quite right to remind us, but one has to always be very careful. We are talking here about the most recent incident, and we don't want to appear as if we are saying that we ought not to be talking about this incident because we forgot some other incident that happens. We are quite aware that in our society, these racially tinged, racially prejudiced incidents occur every day. Every day. They do not always get reported in the media, or even if they get reported, the media do not play up these issues as they ought to. This recent issue, it took the media a full week, I think, to even report on it. As I said some time ago, we tend to be very hypocritical and coward about the question of race. And we don't like to talk about race. And when we talk about it, we try to minimize its importance. And so we never get to have a really full conversation. But we're waiting on Aubrey Norton. I saw him in the studio. I saw him on the studio. Here he is. Aubrey Norton, welcome. Seem to be having some issues there. Are you here? We seem to be having some issues where Aubrey is.
I'm hearing.
Good. I'm hearing you now.
I'm hearing you as well.
Yes. Welcome, Aubrey, to Politics 101. I know your time is limited, so we are going to try to get as much in as we can. I want to start with the trip you made to the United States earlier this month. It was quite a lengthy trip, and you visited several, well, at least I know, at least 3 cities, Washington, D.C., New York, and Atlanta, I think. If you can give the audience a sense of what the trip was intended to accomplish, and did you accomplish what you set out to accomplish?
But first, the trip had 2 dimensions. It had a local dimension, meaning the Guyanese in the diaspora, and it had an international dimension, meaning engaging the United States government. As it relates to the diaspora, we had meetings in Atlanta, Maryland, New York, Queens, and New Jersey. Those meetings, in my opinion, were very successful in the sense that not only did people turn out to them, but they were active active discussions. A lot of ideas were garnered from the discussions. And as a party, we were able to outline our vision and plans so that Guyanese in the diaspora can buy into it and give us the kind of support that is needed for us to position the party to return to government. In essence, we set out to do that, and I think we did that successfully. At every activity we went, they were well attended. People supported them well. The discussions were fruitful and frank, and I think we left the United States having energized the base in the United States, which is important for politics. As it relates to the international community, we were able to meet a number of people in the international community. The head of the Western Hemisphere and the State Department, and we were able to outline our position. We put on top of the agenda the question of a clean voters list. Of course, we
we we seem to be having some freezing going on. We have lost Mr. Norton there for a minute. He was telling us about the issues that he raised when meeting with the representative of the US government. There seems to be some difficulty where he is. They're sorting it out. I hope they do that. It is instructive how you guys call Mr. Norton Aubrey, but the Jagabats and Trench Crapple are according Mr. Jagdeo, and what have you. I think we are getting a little petty here. And we're getting a little petty here. Anyhow, while we wait for Aubrey Norton, Mr. Aubrey Norton, to come back on, I want to urge you all to share the link and let everyone know that the program, Politics 101, started a little bit early this evening so that we could accommodate Mr. Norton, the leader of the PNC. Want to thank everyone who's joining us, whether you're joining from Guyana or you're joining from further afield in the wider Caribbean, in the United States of America, Canada, Europe, lots of Guyanese in the United Kingdom, not forgetting those in Suriname and French Guyana who are joining us. I think Mr. Norton is back with us. Yes, sir. You were giving us a sense of the issues that you raised when you met with the representative at the State Department.
Well, I raised, like I said, the need for a clean voters list, the question of the lack of independence of the Elections Commission, the high levels of corruption in Guyana, the re-emergence of drugs and drug trafficking linked to this criminal state that we have, and a number of other issues that are pertinent to to the present situation.
And in terms of feedback, what kind of feedback you got from the community meetings you held with members of the diaspora?
Well, essentially, people in the diaspora want change. They would like to see a new government. I think people in the diaspora, many of them want to come home, but they seem not intent to come home while this government is in power. The feedback I got from them is that they're prepared to support us to do the work to ensure that we have a government that is accountable, transparent. Also, I think people in the diaspora, they are hoping that the PPP will go its way and that we can return to a government that looks after the interests of the people rather than a government that is focused on itself and making a few rich while the majority of the Guyanese people suffer. I think all and sundry agree that Guyana today is worse off under the PPP than it was under the APNU AFC. So those were the general sentiments that were expressed by people in the diaspora. I think also when I met with the Indo and Afro-Guyanese pastors in the United States, they are concerned about race relations. And we talk at length on the ethnic problems and how we can address them and solve them, or at least attenuate them. And so that was also a critical issue on the table.
Let's spend a couple of minutes on the diaspora, because successive governments have made promises to include the diaspora as an integral part of policy making. And all of them have fallen short in terms of the systematic utilization of the diaspora as part of the developmental trajectory of our country. How do you intend to change that? First of all, do you intend to change it? And secondly, what would you do differently?
First of all, there are a number of things I will do differently. One, I will speak to the diaspora. I've already asked them to map the skills they have so that you first know what skills are available. And then once you can map the skills, you can then begin to work out with the diaspora agreements on how they contribute. If one thing COVID did for us is to say to us that you can engage professionals through Zoom and a number of other media platforms so that they can be involved in the decision making. I don't intend to fool anybody. And so I said to them that there has to be a meeting of the leadership of the PNC and the diaspora to work out a kind of a memorandum of understanding as to how we move forward. It is one thing to say you will engage the diaspora when you get government, but if beforehand you do not work out the modalities for it, then you will find when you get government, you're fighting to work out the modalities. So I've said to them, we need to work out the modalities before, so that on getting government, almost immediately you could implement the approaches you have decided on. For instance, I believe that the diaspora can be made part of think tanks that will contribute to informed positions that will allow for informed decisions. Some of it I intend to pursue even before we're in government. And I'll give you a practical example. I found in the diaspora a lot of persons who have the requisite skills for the oil and gas industry. And so very early on the month, some of them will be engaged with the leadership of the People's National Congress Reform to be able to think through positions on the oil and gas sector, and then to seek their guidance, formulate our policies, and to identify those people in the diaspora who, on getting government, you can utilize to help you in the oil and gas sector. And there are other sectors that this is also applicable. Agriculture, for instance, we have a lot of Guyanese out there who are into agriculture. We have a lot of Guyanese out there who are into information technology. And I think they have to be zeroed in on as an information bank. Some will be kind of voluntary, but there are those that you can engage in proper contracts. For instance, there are companies that can help you with dealing with your goal, your sale goal, virtually everything as it relates to goal. And so one has to identify the niche areas that you can engage the diaspora in. I also believe that we can use the diaspora to help the University of Guyana a lot. There are many professors out there that could be engaged for a fee, and you get the benefit of their experience and their expertise, which will contribute to the development of the university. So those are some of the areas, but also we need to engage them to be involved in business, joint ventures, etc. I think one has to shift away from seeing the diaspora as just senders of barrels and supporters with finance to a more broad involvement that allows them and their expertise to impact the decision-making processes in Guyana.
One of the mistakes I think that we've made in the past is that we have paid more attention to those Guyanese in the diaspora who are able to pick up and come back home, and not necessarily to take advantage of their expertise even as they reside in the United States. Is that something you want to pay more attention to?
Well, I started this presentation by saying COVID taught us we can utilize these mechanisms. And so I am clear in my head that as a party, we need to be able to utilize those expertise. And when you get government, we need to utilize those expertise. A lot of times, we also depend on foreigners when we have in the diaspora Guyanese who can do it, can help us. And so the answer is yes. It's our clear intention to engage the diaspora, not only those who can come home, but those who have expertise in which we can use the information technology available to us to access it and to utilize it. In fact, as a party, we're doing some of that right now. I won't say to you the areas, but we're doing that as a party. Some of the things we raised, and we will continue to pursue them because we believe that to achieve your objectives, you need both your Guyanese in the diaspora and the international community, as well as the people in Guyana on your side as you pursue the development of this country.
You said you met with a group of African Guyanese and Indian Guyanese pastors.
Yes, I did.
Who were concerned, understandably, about race relations in Guyana. I'll use that as, in order to pivot to an incident that has been in the news, and that is the allegations that a young policewoman has made against a young attorney who happens to be the son of a former chancellor of the judiciary. as the matter stands, there are allegations. The police, so far as I know, have not said anything definitive to the public. Coming on the heels of Charles Ramson Jr. making those racially tinged statements just a few months ago, and to some extent, the minister in Parliament hurling sexist remarks at a female parliamentarian. How concerned are you that the issue of race and race relations needs to be addressed as a substantive issue as soon as possible?
Well, I am convinced that it needs to be addressed. My worry is if the government has the capacity to address it. First of all, I believe that the government itself create the conditions propitious to the behavior of Ramson and now Devendra Singh. If as a government you do things in a way that you establish that your interest is only in one ethnic group and the other ethnic groups are only to be used for your political and electoral end, then you develop a kind of a triumphalism in your support base. And so what one sees is the likes of Dharamlal, the likes of Ramson, and now Devendra Singh. They have, the environment was created for them to behave in the way that they would have behaved. And then the PPP nor the government condemned it. So they become complicit because in essence, you have signaled to them that what you did does not demand a reprimand. And so two things you did. You create the conditions for it, and then you condone it. And having condoned it, you also signal to the police who you're controlling and politicizing that they must not do anything. And that is why I think people have resorted to private legal action, because it is evident to all and sundry that the government itself is racist. And its approach to this activity smacks racism. When one looks at what happened in the legal system, and when the two judges who were African Guyanese ruled that didn't favor the PPP, and then Dharamlal called for them to be removed, one would have thought that a party that is interested in democracy and good race relations would have said, no, this can't happen. This will accentuate tension, but no other than Lord Jagdeo came out and supported it. And so they are the very pushers of the ethnic differences in our society, and they seem not intent on dealing with the issue. But what is worse is that you see this issue come to the fore with a young man spitting on a young Afro-Guyanese woman, and it entered the public domain. But there are other elements of racism in this society that have got to be dealt with. Look, the PPP is essentially saying to the African Guyanese community in Guyana, hey, you can have a house lot. But when it comes to proper land for agriculture and business, you give it to one set of supporters. Anybody who travels the Soesdijk-Linden Highway now will see the PPP has virtually given away the resources on the highway to one ethnic group. And I challenge them on every occasion to put out the information, including ethnicity, who were given these lands. And across the country, they are distributing the lands. A house lot? Yes. We can give a few African Guyanese. Real lands for economic empowerment? No. That is a sophisticated form of racism, but once uncovered, it becomes simple to understand. And so we see that as a clear indication of where the government is going. The other thing the government does that is evidently racial in nature, they just allocate resources to the NDCs. And the NDCs that are controlled by the PPP were given their money. But those that are controlled by the APNU AFC, they didn't give them any money. In fact, they choose the people who must provide the services, who obviously are their friends, family, and cronies. And therefore, what happens is there will be little or no money circulating in the Afro-Guyanese communities, while there is a preponderance of money in the Indo-Guyanese community. It's another form of the manifestation of the racism of the PPP. And then they go into African Guyanese communities and they identify people who are willing to support the PPP or compromise themselves for a while to get assistance, and they give it to them. For instance, in COVID, when they were allocating the resources for COVID and for the flood relief, if you were PPP, you got. If you weren't, you were excluded. Now, when I was speaking with the pastors in the United States, I explained to them, and many of them understand what is happening. In fact, I believe they feel that as Christians, they cannot support racism. And we had very good discussions on how in the future we can deal with this issue. Now, the PNCR is on record as saying it will govern Guyana in a way in which all Guyanese benefit. And I'll show you how ridiculous Jack Deo is. We govern Guyana in a fair manner. And so what happened? You were doing projects in all communities. And he has the audacity to walk around to say to communities that you didn't get around to doing things for, to say nothing was done for the APNU AFC to you by the APNU AFC. Now, clearly, we focused on good governance, and therefore you had to spread the resources across the country. And now you are coming with your racial approach, with your approach of domination and control, and saying that nothing was done. The reality is, plenty was done. The PPP neglected virtually all the Afro-Guyanese backlands on the East Coast. It took the APNU AFC to come to government, rehabilitate them, put drainage and irrigation so that those villages can produce again. Now, if we continue the present approach, what we will do is increase the tensions in Guyana, increase the differences, and put Guyana at a place that we don't want to go again, where there is a battle among ethnic groups over the resources of this country. And that is why we need a government that will look after the interests of the people of Guyana, regardless of race, religion, sex. The PPP has shown that it cannot be a decent government. It cannot govern. Now, recently, it is reported by somebody in the PPP to me that Mr. Jack Deo had a meeting, it is alleged, at Freedom House. And what did he say to them in that meeting? He said to them in that meeting, we have to promote some African Guyanese between now and elections because we are coming under pressure for racism. But after the elections, we can go back to this present approach. Now, so it is clear that they are getting pressure. They are getting the vibes from Guyanese and the international community that they cannot continue with this racial approach. But Jack Deo doesn't see a solution to the problem. What he sees is a temporary halt so that they cannot be accused, with the hope that that will help them to win elections, and then they will go back to that position. For you to deal with the issues of race, you have to believe it's a problem. You cannot be racist, meaning you believe in the domination of one race over other races. And there is where the problem lies. For us to deal with racism, good governance will help us. The rule of law will help us. The professionalization of the public service will help us. An education and training program that speak to this issue will help us. I said in one of our press conferences that we believe at this stage there should be an independent ombudsman in every ministry. And meaning they don't have to be physically in the ministry. They could be in a different place and with a ministry under their purview, so that people can complain and they get immediate redress when it comes to ethnic issues. We saw that this apparently fire Ejil brother, but I think the only reason if they fire him is that he has become so barefaced in the handling of birth certificates, etc., that people see as a clear political partisan who lacks the common sense to run anything. And so to save face, they are seeking to move him. Now, race relations, ethnic relations, you have to have the political will to solve them. You're not going to solve them by giving a temporary 1 or 2 African Guyanese here and a temporary halt until you get past the elections and then you return to it. And Guyanese should know that that is what the PPP will do. The PPP, while we were in government, spoke all the beautiful things. They were to come back to government as a clean government. They are the most corrupt. They should have come back to government with the existence of a procurement commission and contracts being allocated in a fair way. They refused to even put the procurement commission in place, and they are discriminating in the allocation of contracts. They should have come back to power to deal with the police in a professional way. They're back to the same thing. You appoint a political lackey to head the police. You have been politicizing the police force so that the police force can't act. I visited with the Henry family today on the west coast of Berbice. I visited with the Henry family on the west coast of Berbice, and clearly they have trumped up charges against the woman, 2 children, and have them incarcerated. And while many in the police force know the facts, but are afraid to speak, many of us believe these 2 young men will be freed, except, of course, they direct the judiciary to sentence them, because there is no evidence that they were involved in the crime. And where the evidence leads, the government does not permit them to go. It is evident to all and sundry that the PPP's hand was directly involved in what happened with the Henry boys, and then what was done to cover it. And so I believe it is very difficult for them to operate as decent human beings. They lack that capacity.
Let's shift gears to another very important issue that you have contended with publicly, and that is the issue at GECOM. You targeted your party, cautioned GECOM about going to another election with the current voters list. And secondly, you've called for the removal of the current chair of the Elections Commission. You must know 2 things. One, it's difficult to get a chair of an Elections Commission removed. Secondly, when it comes to the voters list, that you have to contend with the court ruling, and you have to contend with the the majority in GCOM resisting any attempts to really deal and clean with that voters list challenges. How do you navigate those challenges?
First of all, let us understand. One, there must be a clean voters list. As far as I understand, the ruling was that you cannot take off names off of the existing list. But I think it was 2008 when the list became bloated, we retired that list. And so I think retiring this list will solve the problem. Barra Jagdeo is talking nonsense when he tell you that you cannot remove names from the list. We're not saying remove names from the list. We want a clean list. If it demands retiring the entire list, we wouldn't be taking off any names. We will just be going for a new clean list. And that can be done. So Jagdeo hiding behind some court ruling, more than one time in the history of our country, when the list became bloated and was no longer useful for electoral purposes, the entire list has been retired, and through a new system of house-to-house registration, a new list emerged. And what is interesting is if you look at every time a new list comes after the retirement, it is way below 500,000 people on the list. So Jagdeo is playing politics with himself. This list can be retired and we start a new process. They like to mention CARICOM, but they forget in the very report CARICOM said that we should not go to another election with that list, that democracy will not be served. But Barra Jagdeo is a dishonest, selective politician. He selects what he wants and forget the rest. But let me remind him, every observer mission that came suggested that the list is a problem, and I'm saying that it should be retired and a new list emerge that reflects the will of the people. So he wouldn't be allowed to hide behind Justice, the judge that ruled with them all the time, Justice George ruling. He wouldn't be able to hide behind it because, as I understand the ruling, you can't remove the dead and the people who migrated, which is a little contradiction because I know the laws got provision for you to remove the dead. But let's assume that is true. We're not asking you to remove the dead and to remove overseas people. We are saying to you, this list is bloated. It can no longer facilitate democracy. It needs to be retired and a new process. And we're saying, because of what came out of the recount, we need to add biometric features. We are aware that the Jagdeo Ali regime, they are registering Venezuelans, paying no attention to the fact that we have a territorial controversy and the dangers of it down the line. They are so unpatriotic that they are prepared to register Venezuelan to get votes and forget our national interests. And so I think we need biometric measures. One, to be able to ensure that the double voting that occurred on the East Coast and in PPP stronghold and in Region 1 and other regions are not allowed to reoccur. Now, as a political party, it is our task to bring these issues to the front. We have been doing that. We have been showing the pathways to solving it without confrontation. It is Jagdeo's regime that will have the option to let us continue on that path, or direct us in the direction of political protest, which can bring it, but it's not the best way for it to come. And so while the task ahead is a difficult one, it has to be undertaken because we cannot afford to go to an election with a bloated list. It is assumed that when one talks election, elections are a reflection of the will of the people. If the list is not a reflection of the people, how could the election be a reflection of the will of the people? So we are educating people, we are mobilizing people, and we will act as we see fit. That's the bottom line.
Your party has lost confidence in the chair of the Elections Commission. Is that true?
I would say totally true. Every report we have from our commissioners, what we see in the public domain, the Elections Commission chairman does not operate as an independent. She goes in whatever direction the PPP is going. And therefore, though, when she came there, it was assumed she would have been independent. She has removed every iota of doubt that she's independent. She is clearly partisan, and at this stage, a PPP operative masquerading as an independent election commission chairman. That is the reality.
Do you still support the formula or the model that is being used there at GCOM, the 331 model, or you want another model?
As it stands, I don't think the model is the sole problem. Mm-hmm. If you have 3-3 and you had an independent chairman, there were issues on which the vote would have reflected that independence. It no longer does. So what we have to probably do is to have the same mechanism, but we should not give a cast-in vote to the chair. Because when you give a cast-in vote to the chair and the chair isn't independent, you are really saying they are 4 against 3, rather than 3-3 with an independent chairman. So, Madam Chief Justice or former Judge Claudette Singh has outlived her usefulness as a person who can be considered an independent for a commission as it is presently structured. And so she needs to go her way.
Very interesting suggestion there about getting rid of the cast-in vote. I've been informed that when Steve Surajbali was there, he did not use the cast-in vote regularly. Whenever there was an impasse, he sought to bring consensus rather than use the cast-in vote. So I think if
I do agree. I do agree that Surajbali, who when he came, I had serious concerns about his ability to be independent. And I say that, I probably need to apologize to him. But I would say from his performance, what he did was rarely use the cast-in vote and sought to bring consensus. And in fact, it is reflecting on that period that caused us to arrive at the conclusion that we probably need to remove the cast-in vote, because in the hands of a partisan, the cast-in vote will destroy any attempt at democracy. And so, yes, I think Dr. Surajbali's approach paid dividends. But what is most important is that the PPP fought to get rid of Surajbali for exercising some amount of independence. So the PPP has no interest in that. Their interest is control and domination. And therefore, there's going to be a real fight. A real fight. Because one cannot go to an election in the existing environment.
Aubrey, I know that you have another appointment, but I can't let you go without asking you this very broad question. You were able to win the leadership of your party, partly because of um, the base of the party, and the lower ranks within the party were frustrated with a leadership that they did not think was prepared to fight on their behalf. And you've been the leader now for what, 3 months, 3.5 months? And sometimes when you listen to supporters, it looks as though you've been there for 3 years, because there is there is that pressure on you to up the ante on the PPP. I want you to speak to the supporters directly on that issue of
First
how.
of all,
Yes, go ahead.
I think our supporters elected me to give leadership. Leadership is not necessarily following everything that one section of the community says. Leadership, one has to look at the situation, analyze it, and come up with strategies and approaches to achieve your objective. First, I've said before, our first task really is to mobilize our people, go out there and meet them. I was elected on a platform that says I will re-engage our membership. We will be in contact with them. We'll mobilize them. We will educate them, while at the same time keeping the PPP in check by raising these concerns, etc. While at the same time preparing our support base to take the necessary political action to achieve our objectives. There are a number of things that you must do to take on a status quo politically. We are doing that, and you will see that we will take on this status quo, but it will not be, look, what I think Jacques Dale was looking for was, oh, Norton has come. He protested in 1997. He can come and protest. So he and the police were planning for protests. Well, they didn't get it. And the truth is, anybody who knows strategy must know when they get it, they mustn't know.
Of witch hunting going on within the party from not necessarily you, but from some of your supporters. Is there any truth to that?
Look, the first thing you have to look at is to see the people who are saying that. The people who are saying that are people who, long before this process of my election, was suggesting that I must never become leader of the party. The people in this party, by more than 2/3, would have elected me leader of the party. Having been elected leader of the party, the first thing I did was to co-opt to our executive many of the persons who weren't on my slate, but we think have the talents and the commitment needed to carry this party forward. Don't forget, when you're dealing with a party at this stage, the party had found itself in a position where the leadership was alienated from the membership. We just had a general council of the party in which the membership came from all 10 regions, discussed and agreed on a way forward. Do not forget that success in itself breeds enemies. And in politics, you will always have that little group who control power for years. And when they would have lost power, their task is to be destructive. Our task is to reach out to all the rational people in our party, all the people that are committed to the development of the party in the country, even if they didn't vote for us. We did that. There might be a person or two who might antagonize. And once it comes to my attention, I say to them in no uncertain terms, everybody is accommodated in this party. It is our party. However, I do not live in a world of illusion. There is no party in which there aren't going to be factions. The biggest parties in the world. You have two options. You could do like Jacques Delors, shut everybody down, and so they fall in a straight line. Or you could be accommodating, discuss with people, seek to win them over and get buy-in so that they become part and parcel of the activities. That is what we are doing as a party. We are gradually reducing and expanding the people who are serious about the development of the party, and the very people who are perpetuating division and hope to return to the status quo, they are gradually recognizing reality is here. The people have voted a new young leadership in charge of the People's National Congress reform, and that leadership will take the party forward, will work to unite the party, but will be cognizant of the fact that there are those who unity is not the best thing for them. It is like Guyana. The PPP does not want unity. Unity signals their demise. Division helps them. That is true about a small section in the People's National Congress reform. Forbes Burnham, I think, was the greatest leader we have ever had as a party, and he had to deal with factions. We've had cases where people left the party, etc. Some people said to me, you should expel them, and I said, no. The history of our party is when you expel somebody, it tends to build sympathies and support for them, and you don't achieve your objectives. My intention is not to be an authoritarian leader or a maximum leader. The intention is to work with people, educate them, and I believe those little groups who are not very effective in the party and weren't effective when they were in charge of the party will die a slow death, and we will build a strong party. And that's the reality. We should not live in an ideal world. Change brings enemies. What you have to do is ensure the majority is on the side of change. More than 80% voted for change. We will change.
Mr. Norton, with your permission, let me pitch this last question to you. I know it's Friday. I know you gotta go. We've read in the media that the speaker has written to the leader of the PNU AFC list, informing him of 2 vacancies, which of course came about because of the resignation of Mr. Joseph Harmon and Dr. Nicolette Henry. Does that pave the way for, we know it paves the way for 2 replacements? Are we likely, very likely, most likely, definitely seeing Aubrey Norton in Parliament at the next session?
Well, I would say this. Right now, we are dealing with the process. The 2 persons that would have left are both PNC reps. The PNC, therefore, will make a recommendation to the APNU. At a meeting we had already, it was agreed that I will be leading the APNU, and the APNU had previously supported my nomination for leader of the opposition, so I expect that that will happen. We will identify the other person. I will engage the general APNU and then speak with the AFC, and we will get the action needed to achieve our objective. On this case, there is no need for meaningful consultation because the law is clear. But in my approach, I will consult. I consult my party. I've already consulted with the APNU on this matter, but it was a while back, so I will re-engage them and then we'll speak with the AFC, and we'll arrive at a way forward that should pave the way for Aubrey Norton and the other person who's chosen to go to Parliament.
Well, here you have it, Aubrey Norton, clearing the air on this very thorny matter. Aubrey Norton, thanks for coming on. Thanks for accommodating us. And I know you spent a few minutes more than you intended to. And we are.
I wish it was few. I wish it was.
We're, of course, grateful for that. We'll be checking in with you in the coming days and weeks as things develop. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. And I look forward to hearing from the WPA who we've been engaging so that we can further strengthen the APNU.
And you will be hearing from us in a matter of days, if I may say so publicly. Thank you very much. And there you have it, Aubrey Norton being as frank as he always is. And I'm very glad I raised with him the matter of race. And I think he spoke very frankly to it, didn't dodge, didn't bubble and weave. Another issue I raised with him was the question of you, the supporters, really thinking that the party is not as aggressive as it should be. And he addressed those issues. I asked him, as you saw there, about factionalism in the PNC, whether some of the things we are hearing is true. He addressed them frontally. One does not always have to agree with a leader. But I think in a country like Guyana, if you have a leader who is not afraid to answer tough questions, then we are making progress. I have had my disagreements on policy, on details sometime with Aubrey, but I've always admired him for speaking very frankly and speaking to the issues. Your assessment of the interview and the question that we posed tonight, which is, are African Guyanese being taken for granted in Guyana? I'll open the phones now and try to get as many of you who can come in and give your views on what you heard tonight from Mr. Norton. And of course, the question. The number is 592-604-9722. Please call in. Let's hear what you think about what Mr. Norton said tonight and what you think about anti-Black racism in Guyana on the heels of the recent incident with that young African Guyanese police woman. 604-9722 is the number. It is always refreshing when leaders come out and speak to people and deal with the issues frontally. I noticed my brother Lawrence is saying there, Mr. Norton certainly cleared the air on the appointments to be made in Parliament on behalf of the coalition. It should be noted by all and sundry. Yes, he basically said that he will be going to Parliament. Didn't dance around, and so forth. And I think sometimes if the media are contentious, you tend to get contentious responses from politicians. And sometimes, I think, especially in the last 2 years or so, the media have been very aggressive towards the opposition and less aggressive towards the government. And that imbalance in terms of how the media have approached the two political sides, I think, comes sometimes for opposition politicians to be very careful about how they deal with some of these issues. The number to call is 604-9722.
We have a caller. We have a
We
caller.
have a caller. Caller, come on in.
Go ahead, caller.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Professor Hines.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. Go right ahead.
Okay, yes, perfect. Yes, glad to hear you had Mr. Norton on the show, and I think there's a lot of things that he explained to us and so on, and I'll be happy to hear all these things. But one of the things that I'm worried about, and I'm sure that a lot of people are worried about as well, is that the situation with the government who are registering Venezuelans to vote. The thing is, I think we are still afraid of the courts because the election, the last election, 2020, when they went through the PSP, they did all sorts of things to get Mr. Scotland not being the chairman of the election commission. They did all sorts of things to the court as well. They had to get the voters list stopped, the voters list process, the registration of the voters list. So they did all sorts of things to get their own way back in the last election. And I think that we should race to the courts right now, exhaust all of our options to the courts to get our way now, because that situation with the Venezuelan, the registration of Venezuelans to vote, that's not a good thing for us. So I think that we need to start marching to the courts and dealing with these issues right about now. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. That we should engage the courts. I've said that, our struggle must be multifaceted, and we should engage every avenue of struggle, even in those areas that we think are hostile to the opposition. We should still utilize every area of struggle. Diane is saying here, Dr. Hines, I heard your name and Daki's name on the list, but because WP is no more in the coalition, you guys cannot go into parliament. What a shame. I'm really sorry about that, but time will tell. All is not lost. Yes, you're correct, Diane. Both Kidaki and I were candidates for the WPA on the APNU AFC list. And so under normal circumstances, we would be eligible to go into parliament. In fact, the reason that we put, well, not the reason, but the occasion that led us to leave the coalition was that we anticipated that we were going to be allocated 2 seats, and we intended to split those 2 seats in 4. 1 seat to be split between Tabitha Sarabo and Ali Majid, and the other seat to be split between Kidaki Amsterdam and Dion Abrams. That's how we worked it out. Mr. Granger ended up giving us 1 seat, and instead of naming the person who we wanted to go first, which was Ali Majid, he named a person of his choice. So he chose for us who our representative should be. And that's why we walked from the coalition. But as indicated by Mr. Norton, we have been talking with Norton and the new PNC leadership. And as Diane said, we'll see. All is not lost. Yes.
You have a caller.
Caller, you're on.
Go ahead, caller.
Hey, good evening to you, Dr. Hines. Good evening to the viewing public. We are pleased focusing on the Venezuelans, right, being registered here, right? But there's a broader picture. We need to look at those Indians that are coming from India, and those Bangladeshis who are coming here, right? They are more easy to be integrated into society here. And I'm saying that those are the persons we need to look out for, right? Because we could give an account more for a Venezuelan because he might be speaking Spanish and we might be easily picked up. But the ones who are Bangladeshis and the Indians, right? We need to place our focuses on them. So those are my comments. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for your comments. It's a very important area, that area of the registration of non-Guyanese or people who have moved to Guyana are now resident here. It is a very important area that we have got to keep on top of. The number is 60.
You have another caller?
You have another caller. Caller, come on through. You're on to Politics 101.
Yeah, good night, Dr. Hines.
Good night, sister.
I like what the leader of the opposition said, that he is looking forward to have your party, the WP, inclusive in future governance of Guyana. And I think that would be a good mix and a good work for the country, because if you look at your program and Kadaki program, those two programs are programs where lots of people who cannot get the hearing in any other area to be heard, it is being heard through your programs. And I feel that you now out of parliament, if you're doing this type of job, so that we could have our problems, our feelings and everything here on your program, you stepping up a notch and getting in to government, I think it's going to be a plus for a lot of people like us. Now with what Mr. Norton said about the list and so on, I don't know why Barajagyo is claiming that names cannot be taken off a list. When you're dead, you're finished. If you go to the bank and die, the bank, the ad, hold this country at ransom with what he's saying about the list. And we do need a new list, because right now it is registration. And if when the registration is over, you add the registration to the list that is not good, I don't think we could get any election. And what this country should put into the thing, that every time when there is election, the list must be sanitized for election. Because I know of people who have worked about 7 elections, and when they started to work the first elections, they got a lot of dead people, a lot of people outside, and to the last 2020 elections, those people who were dead all these years, names still appeared on the voters list for the 2020 election. And the thing that they find that the caller said that they are bringing in Bangladeshis and Indians who could be put on the list. It is a fact. You may say this is a Venezuelan and them are Spanish, but when you get Indians coming from these countries and they are added to the list, you cannot differentiate that they are from out of Guyana. So what he's saying is quite right. That is my thing, and I think to the moderator, happy birthday to him. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. And I join with you and our audience tonight in wishing our moderator, Brother Andrew Weeks, a very happy birthday. Andrew, as we say, you're 1 year younger or 1 year older, depending on how you see it. Happy birthday, my brother. There we go. There you go. Happy birthday to Brother Andrew. And as we await, is there another caller?
Go ahead, caller.
Hey, good evening, Dr. Hines.
Good evening.
Hello?
Yes, you're on. You're on Politics 101.
Hello?
Go ahead,
Good evening, Dr. Hines.
Yes, I'm hearing him.
It's an honor sitting and listening to the next president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Hello?
Go ahead, we're hearing you.
Yes, yes, go right ahead.
It's
Stop
an honor
listening to
listening to
yourself.
Mr. Martin. I would like to support what he's saying. It makes a lot of sense. And I would like the Guyanese public to support him and rally around him. We should not go to another election. We should not go to another election with a bloated list. We should put our feet down as we approach the court. We should approach the street as well. Because the court no longer votes in favor of the coalition or the PNC. The court do their own thing, and we should be able to go to the street and voice our opinion and gain international attention. Hello?
Yes, yes, we're hearing you.
Yes, that's nice. So I think we should be very strong on that and make our point and support Mr. Martin and team, because I strongly believe he's the next president of Guyana. But he cannot be the president with a bloated list, sorry. We have to ensure that we have house registration, and every citizen of Guyana should understand that the list that GCOM has is illegal, and we need it sanitized, we need it clean. Thank you, Dr. Hines.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming through. And last evening, we made a pitch for Village Voice, the new newspaper, which has been off the stand in recent weeks. And we are urging you to make a small contribution to keep that paper on the stand. You can go to Village Voice itself, the website, and make a contribution there, or do what some people did last evening. They send their contribution here using our Cash App and WhatsApp handles, and I will make sure that those contributions get to Village Voice. So you can either go to the Village Voice website and make your contribution there. There is it, villagevoicenews.com, and they will direct you there where to make your contributions. Or you can make your contributions here on Politics 101, and we'll make sure we get, just make sure you put a note saying it's a contribution for Village Voice. I want to thank those of you who right away last night made your contributions. Now, I like to say small contributions add up. You know, a $5, if 100 people give $5, that's $500. You know, if it's $5 or $10 or $15 or $20 that you can afford, please make a contribution to keep this newspaper on the stands in Guyana. In the year that it has been there, it has made a valuable contribution, and we want to continue. Next week, I'm going to have Mr. Lincoln Lewis, who is a board member of the newspaper, to come on and to speak directly to you. But in the meantime, please make your little contribution to Village Voice News so that it can continue to print.
You have another caller.
Caller, you're on Politics 101.
Yeah, good night, Dr. Hines.
Good night, my brother. Yes, you're on. Good night.
Yes, good night, Dr. Hines. I'm calling from Canada and just explain, if you, Guyanese, is not a citizen or a resident of a country, you cannot vote for that country. So I let Venezuelans registering. If the Venezuelans have Guyanese parents, right, they are Guyanese by descent. But if they're not Guyanese parents, they are born Venezuelan without any linkage of Guyanese, they ain't supposed to register.
Well, we understand that the government has been granting citizenship to a number of non-Guyanese, a number of immigrants who are now living in Guyana. So you register them for purposes of getting their registration card and their ID card. And then remember, the voters list comes from that registration list. And that's where the problem is. Yes. Thank you for your call.
If they give them a Guyanese card, but it's supposed to be different. The ID card is supposed to be different than a Guyanese citizen ID card.
Right, right.
As well as they're supposed to get a different Guyanese ID card showing, okay, y'all get status in Guyana is for 3 years, but not. You have a different type of ID card, right? Not with the citizen. Right?
Yes.
It gives them that the ID card is supposed to be different to the citizen ID card.
Yes, 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 you're correct. You're correct. You're correct. Thank you for coming through. Ian is asking here whether the PPP is depending on the foreigners to vote for them. Mr. Norton have to be very vigilant. Yes, they are. Remember, prior to the last election, the PPP didn't want Asians to come to Guyana because they felt that Asians were going to vote for the coalition. Now, they are admitting Colombians and Venezuelans and Brazilians because in their minds, those people are more likely to vote for them. Yes, it's a political ploy, and we have to be vigilant. Politics 101, and on a Thursday evening, we heard from Mr. Norton earlier, and it seems from the calls and the comments that you've given him a thumbs up in terms of how he handled himself and handled the questions on tonight's program. And as I said, that one can disagree with a leader. It's our right to disagree, but one must acknowledge when a leader doesn't dance around questions. The most frustrating thing is when you ask a political leader a question and he either dances around the question or ignores the questions and gives you talking points. Aubrey Norton did not do that tonight. I'm not saying that he may not have done it in the past and he wouldn't do it in the future, but he did not do it tonight. And I made sure that I asked him some questions that might have been uncomfortable. Are there factions in the PNC, or are you dealing with it? He was frank about that. Are you going to Parliament? Yes, yes. He was very clear about that. How do you deal with your supporters who are saying that you are not being tough enough? And he talked about tactics and strategies and so on. Sometimes that's all the supporters want to hear, the truth.
We have a caller from Antigua and Barbuda. Go ahead, that caller.
Good night. Good night.
You got to speak up, right?
You hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good night. I would like to know how I can make a contribution from my towards the as you mentioned just now, the program.
Yes. You can make a contribution either through Cash App. There it is. You can make the contribution through Cash App or PayPal, or you can contact me directly. And because there are other ways such as MoneyGram and so on that you can make your contribution. So if you're not able to make it through Cash App or PayPal, you can contact me, inbox me on Facebook, or email me at.
Hello?
I didn't hear. Yes.
I contact you on this. I got it. I before use money, got more website. Yeah.
All right. So contact me at this email,
On this phone number?
dhines6106@aol.com, or you can inbox me on Facebook, either of the two, and I will direct you what to do.
Okay, sir. Next thing.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hello?
Yes. Go ahead.
Hello? The next
Yes.
thing is that I was home. I'm from Region 6. And I was home for 2 weeks. And the office, the party office in New Amsterdam, it's closed. It's closed. And it looks like it's not functioning. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
one thing the first night in there. Huh?
That's the PNC office in New Amsterdam.
Yeah, it closed. I was home for 2 weeks, about a month ago, a month and a half. And the office, every single day was there. Every day I pass it, it's closed.
All right. We'll make sure we pass that information on to the PNC.
Huh?
We'll make sure we pass that. Andrew, can you
Please
pass it
pass
on
it.
to the party secretariat? That people in New Amsterdam are saying that the party office is closed.
Will do.
Yeah, we will make sure we get that information to the PNC secretariat as early as tomorrow. Thank you very much. Lawrence, I agree with you. No request has been submitted to GCOM to remove from the coalition the list of persons recommended by the WPA. They're very much eligible to be selected to Parliament. I must reiterate, you're quite right. In a technical sense, we have not been removed, our names have not been removed, and so we can be extracted to go to Parliament if a vacancy occurs, and so forth. That in effect, what you're saying is that the WPA doesn't have to be in the coalition for their names to be extracted if a vacancy occurs, because we did participate as part of the coalition. We left after the election. So I agree with you, Lawrence. I agree with you. In a real technical sense, you are right. WPA people are eligible to go to Parliament if vacancy exists. Thanks for that clarification.
We have another caller. Go ahead.
Caller, come on through. You're on to Politics 101.
Good night, Dr. Hyde.
Good night,
I've
sister.
been in there for over 17 years, also you. But to become American citizens, we have to learn the American Constitution. So what is the criteria that Jack Bill is using for these Venezuelans and Indians to become citizens of Guyana?
There is not a similar criteria like the United States. You apply for the citizenship and you're granted by the government. There's no criterion like writing an exam or anything like that. It's left to the discretion of the government.
Then it shouldn't be.
Well, that's a very important suggestion. That's a very important suggestion for constitutional reform, which is that there should be some requirement for citizenship. After Mrs. Jagan was elected president in 1997, a law was subsequently passed to say that in order to become president, you had to be a born Guyanese and not a naturalized Guyanese. So we can change the law to put requirements for citizenship, such as writing an exam about your knowledge of the country, etc., etc.
Wow, that's a dying shame.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's a
The
dying shame.
Eastern Caribbean,
We need to.
the Eastern Caribbean,
And we need to get out. Look, I'm seeing today I read that now President Ali is saying if he wants to get any complaint about Darren Lal, you're supposed to go to the police station and make a police report because they're not looking into that. Come on.
yeah, it's not so self-serving. Go to the police when the police itself would not touch a minister.
The police would not do anything.
That's right. The president has the power to
The police would not
dismiss
do
him from
anything.
parliament.
Now we're bringing this case to light. We're letting them know how Darren Lal is for a minister that is sitting in the highest place in our country. And then you're going to telling us that to go to the police where you have the police in your pocket?
Yes, it's quite ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I'm very glad you made that observation. When I saw it, I said, look at these people. Look at these people. You have the power. You have the power to sanction, to discipline a minister who it is alleged is behaved. The least you could do is say, I'm relieving you of your ministerial position until a proper investigation has been done. You're telling them, go to the police. That's the kind of leadership we have. That's the kind of leadership we have in Guyana. And that's the kind of leadership we have to get rid of. Thank you. Thank you, caller. My brother Ali Majid said no names were removed from the list submitted by the coalition to GCOM, but in the instant case, both of the persons who have resigned from parliament were from the PNC, are part of the APNU. Yes, you can't replace PNC person with a WPA person. The two people who've resigned were from the PNC component, and so it is only fair that the two people who should replace them should come from the PNC. So thanks for that clarification there, Ali Majid, WPA executive member. Right. Caller, you're on Politics 101.
Dr. Hines.
Good evening.
Now, my question is, why can't GCOM issue or the government and GCOM issue 2 forms of ID cards? Because I've lived in Antigua for a number of years, and over there, while I was there, I was never issued a national ID card. In Antigua, there's a national ID card and there's a voter's ID card showing that I have permanent residency. I wasn't a citizen, but I had lived long enough, thereby acquiring residency. So I think the opposition should look into that.
I'm very glad you raised that. They attempted to do that at the 1997 election. They actually had ID cards for voting, and the court ruled that it was unconstitutional. Justice Claudette Singh vitiated, meaning that she found that the 1997 election was null and void because they used ID cards for voting. And she ruled that it was unconstitutional. She said that even if the parties agreed to use it at the level of GCOM, it is unconstitutional. That in order to do that, you have to change the law. And so it is something that is worth considering in terms of changing the law. It can be done at the level of GCOM. The court said that it can be done there. The law will have to change. But I agree that would be a very easy thing to separate your list of registrants from your voters list. In Trinidad and Tobago, they have the system just like us, where they extract the voters list from the list of registrants. But at their GCOM, every day, they have people who are working there at the Elections Commission. Every day they call up the births and death place. Every day they call up the places, the immigration, and they're finding out who left today, who came back today, who died today. And as they get that information on a daily basis, they plug it into the system. We do not do that at GCOM. But the suggestion is well taken. Yeah, go right ahead.
Yes, because my point is all they're doing here by just having the one national ID card being used as a voter's ID card too is opening the kind of worms for voter rigging or padding the lips. So why can't we first? Everything was being said that the country, it would be too costly. Now we have enough money at our disposal. So why can't there be two forms of ID card? And I think that the opposition should seriously look into that, to have a voter's ID card and a national ID card. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that suggestion. Politics 101 tonight. We have opened the mic after a long time, and it's good to hear from you. Very good suggestions here tonight. Very good comments, very good sentiments. It speaks to the political intelligence of our people. You don't necessarily have to go and get a degree in political science. There's what we call native instinct, that you learn your politics from your day-to-day engagement. You learn your politics at your workplace. You learn your politics from your engagement with other citizens. You learn your politics from programs like these, which give the kind of information that you need, and then you process that information and turn it into political wisdom. That is what makes for an informed electorate. And an informed citizenry means an informed electorate. It means, therefore, that people will make very wise decisions when they go to vote. I can't help but saying that. And those of you who have not made it to the phone, I'm following some of the comments here, and they're equally incisive, equally intelligent comments. Thank you all so much. Do we have another caller? If not, I want to thank you all for coming out in your numbers tonight to greet Mr. Norton and to remain engaged. And let me repeat, please make your small donation to keep Village Voice News going. You can make your donation right there in Politics 101 via Cash App, PayPal, or you can go to Village Voice News itself on their page and make your donation there. If you want to use one of the other means, please get in touch with me, dhines6106@aol.com. It's right there on the screen, or just inbox me at Facebook and I will direct you how to get your donation to Village Voice News or Politics 101, or both, as the case may be. I want to thank those who have already contributed to Politics 101 and or to Village Voice. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the contributions from the rest of you. Thank you all very much. Have a restful weekend. We know that there is no rest when it comes to politics, but try to get some rest. And next week, Tuesday, we'll be right back. Thank you all so much. Happy birthday again to our moderator, Mr. Andrew Weeks, the man behind the scenes. You hear his voice every now and again when you have the call-in program. Happy birthday to you, my brother. And to the rest of you out there, those of you who are celebrating your birthday today, I want to say happy birthday to you. Special happy birthday to Member of Parliament Tabitha Sarabo Ali. Her birthday is today. Happy birthday, Tabitha. And to the rest of you celebrating your birthday, happy birthday to you too. Thank you so much. See you next week.
It is time for change in the Guyana Teachers Union, and two candidates, Vanessa Kissoon and Coretta McDonald, are running for President and General Secretary respectively. Listen, as they tell us why teachers across the country should vote for them in the election.
You're running for president of the Guyana Teachers Union. Why are you running?
I believe that it is time that the Guyana Teachers Union and teachers get the type of representation that they deserve. I believe that it is time that teachers be respected. And I honestly believe, Dr. Hines, that I am the person to take the Guyana Teachers Union and the teachers of this beloved country forward and into the future.
What have you learned about your stint as General Secretary that makes you want to continue?
Coretta McDonald is a part of a team, and I like, and I've been promoting team. The fact that you're asking me this question about what I've learned, I have learned to be even more resolute against this regime. I've learned that. I want to say to teachers, on that ballot paper, you're going to see the various positions. So you'll have president, you have two names there. Look for Vanessa Kissoon, put your X right there. For first vice president, you're going to see two names. Look for Lesmin Collins, put your tick there. For second vice president, you're going to see two names. Put your tick to one of those two names. Then you're going to see the position of General Secretary. You know where you have to put that, Coretta McDonald.
Vote Vanessa Kissoon for President of the Guyana Teachers Union and Coretta McDonald for General Secretary.